Right, hi guys, it's Phoebe from Who's Phoebe and welcome back to another Doctor Who video. My camera has been really stupid today because it has kept trying to be an idiot and say there's no memory card and stuff like that. So honestly I have no idea what's going on with it, but hopefully I've now got it working. Sorry for the slightly long introduction. So today's video is my review on Dot and Bubble. Now this for me was not a great episode. This is probably the worst of the series, and I don't say that very often for Doctor Who episodes or series, because unfortunately for me this was such an episode that I was like I went in there and was like being patient and all of that, was went in there with an open mind, because I felt like for this episode I didn't think I'd need to go into this episode with an open mind, because most of the time with Doctor episodes I always go in with an open mind anyway, no matter how good or bad they are, and then obviously I judge it on there. But I had to watch this episode at midnight because I thought if this episode's really bad then I can at least watch it again to make my opinion actually well known. And for this episode it was very, very interesting, but also very bad as well. So unfortunately, you know how these reviews work. I give you my positives and I give you my negatives, and this is exactly what I'm going to do. Now for me, this episode was disappointing. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would, and however interesting it was, I didn't personally enjoy it. I just thought it was boring. But I went into this episode with an open mind because I'm so glad I did. But let's start with the positives, because I only have a few positives, and to make this video bearable I really want to do the positives first. So the positives were, I liked the concept of this episode. I loved the idea of us going to this futuristic world and people talking through screens. That's basically what this episode was. Lindy in her own little bubble with her dot and her bubble thing, and talking to all of her friends through this tech, this futuristic technology. I liked the concept of that. So that kind of makes up for the lack of pacing in this episode. The other thing I did like about it, I liked the element of the slugs. I thought those things would bother me. It didn't. It just made the episode really, really unwatchable. I've never been so angry in my life. Those are the only two positives I can give this episode. Those are the only two positives I can give. Now, time for the negatives, and there's more negatives than positives in this week's review, because last week was a little bit different and the week before was also different. It had less negatives, more positives. This has got more negatives than positives. I didn't like this episode, not one single second of it. I liked the Doctor and Ruby coming in and talking to Lindy on the screen and stuff, and that was good, that was well written. However, I didn't like the idea of it all being these rich white people in this community. So basically their homeworld is like this thing, and they send 17 to 27-year-olds to this place to be, I don't know, independent if you like, or to learn the ways of the work. I don't know how this sort of world works really. You know, that's never really explained in the episode or anything. And I liked the idea of you sort of wake up and then you talk to your friends immediately. However though, the slugs bothered me. Not because of the design. I thought the design was really, really great, but I did feel, however, because the Dot had created these slugs because it's sentient, it learnt to hate people. It learnt to hate because it hovers around all day around people's faces and then has to listen to them talking all day. So that was interesting. That's what I hated. The Dot making these slugs, and God knows how long that took the Dot to make them. I didn't really like Lindy in this episode. I thought I would. I thought she'd be like, oh yeah, this is really, really great, but I didn't. I absolutely hated her towards the end. Mostly because she started off really great. This very popular young girl with a bunch of friends, chatting away, you know, doing normal teenage things, going to work for 2 hours a day, and then partying. It just seemed she seemed very, very nice at the beginning. So I didn't have a problem with her character during the beginning and the middle of the story of the episode, because I felt like, you know, this is a normal teenage girl doing normal teenage things, going to work and then partying. So yeah, I didn't have an issue with her at the beginning or the middle. It's kind of the ending I had a problem with, and I'll get to that soon. I liked how the Doctor was able to unblock himself. From when she blocked him, he was able to unblock himself because of the Sonic and stuff like that. I liked Ruby in this episode as well. She told Lindy to keep calm and tell that she was getting out. However, the fact that the TARDIS couldn't get in to find time actually, like, above ground, because the TARDIS was stuck underground because the security is crazy, tells me this world for some reason needs to be very well protected with a bunch of force fields and stuff, so strong that the TARDIS can't get in, which is very, very odd, which really annoyed me. So it was interesting. However, I did like the fact that the Doctor was working out that the slugs eventually in the end were eating people in alphabetical order. Now let's talk about the middly part of the episode where Lindsay turned horrible. So when the Doctor guides her, she meets Ricky September, and the Doctor and Ruby's reaction to the fact he's really hot is very, very interesting. Again, I love the dynamic. Even if we didn't really see much of them in this episode, it was very, very thrilling to see them together on a screen again, you know, even if it was just like in Lindsay's bubble, and I feel like that was very, very kind of, you know, vibey, and you know, so that felt to me very, very interesting in a weird sort of way. I didn't like though how Lindy, as she was kind of escaping with those numbers that the Doctor kind of, you know, was sending to her, I didn't like how she dobbed in Ricky September. Richard Coombs, she actually said his actual name was Coombs, his last name was Coombs, and he changed it when he got subscribers to September. So the fact that she dobbed him into the dot and it killed him did not sit right with me. I loved it up until that point. That point was just like a total turning point for me and her character. Did not appreciate that, and I hated it. I mean, this episode was also very like Black Mirror, if you've ever seen that. Very like Black Mirror to me, sort of, you know, people kind of living in their own worlds and stuff like that, but this never sat right with me, this episode. And it's not one I enjoyed either. But onto the more... This was completely racist. I don't often say that, but I do. I don't often say this, but this episode was absolutely just full of white people. The Doctor was the only non-white person in this situation. I hated that. Russell, I don't know what you did, but honestly, you need to rethink how you write Doctor Who in the future. This was not a great episode. Mostly because, like, I felt like the white people were too entitled to the way they were. Sort of like, you know, sort of like high and entitled, and like, you know, not taking into consideration that the Doctor is here. He's gonna get you off if you let him. So I felt like that was very, very weird for a Doctor episode to go down this route. Interesting with a black Doctor, but sort of not impressive in a way that this world is specifically built for one type of human being, and it doesn't sit right with me, and I didn't like this, and also that knocks this episode's rating down a lot, because obviously it was very, very kind of, you know, one type of people. So yeah, it was interesting. I liked the concept of this episode. I liked the slugs, even though they weren't scary. However, I just didn't enjoy the actual performances given by the actress who played Lindy, or any of the people who played her friends and anything like that. Scooty Gutwar and Millie Gibson's performances though, always on point. Really, really did love their kind of, you know, them being there but not being there at the same time kind of vibe. I really do love that. However though, given the fact that this episode was such a weird one and a stupid one as well, don't often use those words twice in the same sentence. And a lot of this was like very one community, like not enough mixed, and that bothers me very, very much about this episode, and it just knocks the rating down so low. I originally, the first time I watched this, I originally gave this a 5.5 out of 10, but now after a second rewatch, I have decided that it's not worth that high rating. That was me being very, very generous for this, and I don't even think it deserves a 5.5 out of 10. So my rating, of course, will change, and I'll get to that in a sec. The fact that, like, Lindy's friend said that you're not one of us really, really, really hurt. Saying that, it hurt the Doctor too, and then Reba was like, I can't even. She couldn't believe how stupid these people were being. And that ending just ruined it for me. That ending between Lindy and the Doctor just ruined it for me. I'm sorry, but it ruined it for me. I feel like this episode now is going to be very diverse in the Whoniverse and the fandom as well. Like, people are either going to really, really love this episode, they're either going to hate it, or they're not sure whether they hate or love it. And I'm more kind of edging on to the fact that I hate it side. Would I rewatch this again? Probably not. I mean, I'm always watching Doctor Who, but who doesn't skip the odd episode now and again? Would I rewatch this? Don't think so. I mean, unless of course I was rewatching it for YouTube purposes. So maybe next year I'll rewatch this again a year on to see if my opinion's changed. But no, I don't think I'd ever rewatch. I don't think I'll rewatch this again unless of course it was for rewatch purposes for my YouTube channel. But no. So for that reason, I'm giving this episode a 1.5 out of 10, and that's because this episode was probably the worst of the lot. I thought Space Babies was bad. This was worse. So yeah, that's how bad it was. I thought Space Babies was bad. Turns out this was the worst. This has definitely been the worst from season 14 so far. I'm very much looking forward to Rogue next week, so I'm really hoping Rogue kind of, you know, helps Doctor Who be Doctor Who again. After this episode, we need another good episode again. So far, the episodes I've enjoyed have been The Devil's Cord, Boom, and of course 73 Yards. Those have been the most kind of, those have been the first three like proper real episodes I've actually gone and properly enjoyed throughout this series. Episodes 2, 3 and 4, Dot and Bubble as a 5th episode, not good. Didn't like it. So yeah, it gets a 1.5 out of 10, and that's probably the lowest I've ever rated a Doctor episode. If it's not, please go back and watch a lot of my videos with the classic reviews and other reviews to see if I have actually rated any episodes lower than a 1.5, but probably this is probably the first episode I've ever rated that low, because I've mostly said 2s, 3s, 4s, 5. Basically, I've rated anything above a 1 before, so this is interesting. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, and also click the notification bell so you get notifications every single time I upload. And I will be doing a podcast about this. I've got to, because honestly, quite frankly, this was not an enjoyable episode, and I want to really kind of sort of dissect it with my co-host. And I will be talking about Boom and 73 Yards in that podcast as well. Okay, bye. And in the words of the 10th Doctor, Alonzi.